decorations or literature that represents various racial groups. Conversely, the simple inclusion of a few token posters, pictures, art books, or people cannot be interpreted as relieving microaggressions. So, who or which culture created the office culture, which would, quote, normally, unquote, assail any racial identity other than white male? So there's actually a whole set of case law and practices by federal civil rights authorities that basically talk about hiring in terms of looking at the front office look. Who is the front office look? Who do you want greeting your clients? Blonde hair, blue-eyed woman? Pretty? Attractive? Who's doing the defining? So, who has allegiance to maintaining that culture? And academe is part of generating and maintaining office culture. We definitely play a part in that. No question. Microassault, an explicit, conscious racial derogation characterized primarily by a verbal or nonverbal attack meant to hurt the intended victim through name-calling, avoidant behavior, or purposeful discriminatory actions. This is different from type 1 because it works like this. Referring to someone as colored, right? That's not a fighting word. It's a dated term. Oriental, or half-breed, or any other racial epithets are dated terms discouraging or disparaging interracial interactions, serving white patrons before someone of color, displaying swastikas or Confederate flags. Now, part of that piece is in terms of, when we encounter, for example, the Confederate, the pickup truck. I'm not sure that it's the same people because I don't have the license plate, therefore I don't have, the evidence. But I'm walking down West 11th towards Fayette Meyer, and this pickup, and I had locks at the time, and it's like April. It's a sunny day, so I'm enjoying no rain in Eugene. And I'm walking and I hear these people shout out, "Halloween's over." Like, yeah, Halloween's over, right, it's April. Like, oh, my locks? Because they're, at Disneyland you can get dreadlock wigs, so this is like a fright wig or something? Now, they didn't call me nigger, but Halloween's over? Yeah, it's in April. Yeah, idiot. I know that. So, my thought was, okay, you driving by as you say that, flying your Confederate flag from the back of your pickup truck, stop and say that to my face. They drove on. These are some of the same people that cornered a 13-year-old kid in Springfield on, what was it, Memorial Day or something? Anyway, Memorial Day. Called them nigger, et cetera, et cetera. They got an arrest on it. I don't know what the disposition is. Showed up in the parking lot here. So, displaying Confederate flags is not necessarily just simply freedom of speech. It's not a freedom of speech issue. Confederacy, no, you lost. Okay? I'm an American. Oregon was not part of the Confederacy. If you're celebrating your Mississippi or Georgia heritage in Oregon, why are you doing that? And why are you doing that to me? I mean, I like it when the enemy declares themselves openly, so, okay.
Using ideas as a form of power and domination.
All right, so that there, yes, you can say that, but your communication does have consequences. So old-fashioned racism conducted on an individual level, often in private situations that offer the perpetrator anonymity or insulation, can take the form of telling a person of color that another person of color used racial terms, and then denying saying anything, or a non-person of color, telling a person of color that a non-person of color used racial terms and then denies saying anything when the person of color reports or confronts. These are all, there's whole scenarios with this. So, microassaults. Perps often hold notions of minority inferiority and will display them publicly in loss of control situations or when they feel safe and either anonymous or protected. So micro insults, communications that convey rudeness and insensitivity, demeaning a person's racial heritage, subtle or not so subtle snubs, frequently unknown to the perpetrator but clearly conveying a hidden insulting message. For example, the affirmative action innuendo, the most qualified person should get the job regardless of race. How did you get your job? Did you have affirmative action quotas get you your job? Which you were otherwise not qualified to get? So, for example, a white instructor fails to acknowledge students of color, or their eyes glaze over when non-white students' concerns are aired, or ignore you when you raise your hand and don't call on you, even when you're the only hand for minutes, that kind of stuff. Microaggressions. So you can see these encounters happen a lot. And so these folks basically, because they're basically, psychiatrists and psychologists, micro-invalidation, characterized by communications that exclude, negate, or nullify the psychological thoughts, feelings, or experiential reality of a person of color. Compliments of one's speech or diction with underlying assumptions of foreign birth. You speak so well. You're so articulate. I gotta ask, where are you from? What do you mean, where am I from? From LA. You don't have an American face. Wait, you're Korean. What do you mean I don't have an American face? She goes, your face is relaxed. Ooh. Okay. It's a backhanded compliment, but yeah, no, I was from here. I'm born here. I'm American. And lots of folks get that. You speak so well for, whatever that is, right? Those are microaggressions, micro-invalidation. You're not a real American. I don't see color. We are all human beings. And are statements that neither acknowledge, negate, or neutralize systemic discrimination. I don't see color. Well, color blindness is like red and green, and that's only in males, so what are you saying? You ain't saying in grayscale. So you're actually saying that I think you're cool, or you're not like those other people. Right? So those are things that are often said. So the 9 species of microaggressions: alien in your own homeland, ascription of intelligence. This can work both ways. You're a person of color and you're not as intelligent as me, or you seem more intelligent than the typical people in your race, and they'll say that to you. Now that's not calling you nigger, that's just like, okay. Color blindness, criminality, assumption of criminal status. So for example, my Driving While Black Stop by Eugene. Denial of individual racism, myth of meritocracy, just work hard, obey the system, and you'll make it, you'll be successful. Pathologizing cultural values and communication styles, second-class status, and environmental invalidation in terms of what you're displaying, who's a representative. So I'll skip through this because these are skill-building pieces that you can look at your leisure. I've also put the entire paper on the Moodle site. So this also includes skill building for you if you're a target. So one of the reasons that microaggressions is given so much airtime, especially by me, because most people haven't heard of it, but the data shows that these are the things that happen most frequently. And even though this is basically focused on race, because that particular literature was based on race, it applied to other things as well. Okay? There are gender microaggressions, sexual orientation microaggressions, class microaggressions. Right? So basically, when your science perceives something, you write about it and you talk about it. So what happens is that microaggressions, because they happen more frequently, raise your blood pressure. You're subject to stress-related diseases more. There's actually more deaths related to microaggressions than lynchings, because they happen more frequently. So your internal reaction or response, if it felt wrong, you need to deal with it as if it did happen and apply self-care. So vent, use appropriate humor, give instruction to the perpetrator. So any of these can be subject to the damned if you do, damned if you don't, so it's a choice. So some questions. All right, so for every ism, there's a corresponding privilege system. And making the privilege system visible diffuses some of its power. So universal practice is what we call universal practices united in power. So part of the universal practice is to illuminate the ism. So universal precautions like we have with HIV, AIDS. So the assumption is with universal precautions, everybody's infected. You treat everybody as if they're infected and you protect yourself with barrier methods, gloves with your dentist and emergency workers, et cetera, et cetera. Universal practice, you assume that if they speak English, they're capable of perpetrating microaggressions or isms. Like there's some privilege system. Allow me to demonstrate. So the interlocking systems of oppression I put together as CRASH. All right? Class, race, religion, age, ability, addiction, sexism, and heterosexism. You could also put looks and hygiene on the end as kind of hidden ones that are interrelated with the others. All right? So, for example, with classism. So above this line, you have privilege. Below the line, you're targeted. So above the line, rich, middle class, about 80,000 a year. That's where it starts, middle class. Wealth sustained beyond work. So here's how that works. If you are above the line if you can have an $80,000 medical bill and it doesn't wipe you out. Okay? If an $80,000 medical bill can wipe you out, you ain't rich. Okay, so even middle class, you could be subject to that. There was this woman in Arizona that had a scorpion bite, got 2 shots of anti-scorpion venom. The shots each cost 20 grand. So 40 grand, boom, plus the ER bill, another 10. 50 grand, boom, pay us in a year. Right. Okay, so one bad medical bill or disability, you're not rich. So wealth, when you're wealthy, your wealth is sustained beyond work. In fact, you don't have to work to be sustained. Racism, we've talked about. Spirituality and religion, we've talked about. Age, privilege is like 30 to 50. When you're marketable and viable as a job. I am no longer, I'll show you what my personal analysis is. This is up on the website. You can do your own. Ability. Temporary able-bodied, that's what TABM means. Temporarily able-bodied and mentally competent. And below the line is physical disability or mental ability or addictions. Some addictions that are privilege, alcohol and prescription drugs, i.e. legal good drugs, are treated differently than addictions to street drugs. Okay, looked upon differently. Sexism, male, female, heterosexual, LGBT, QIAA, or A squared, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex, asexual, or ally, or other. So for example then, I didn't do this, I was at a workshop, so I'm above the line in gender, sexual orientation, class, and ability, below the line in age, because I'm 57, on the line for religion, because I can pass for Christian. Well, some people think that if you believe in black Jesus, you're not Christian, so whatever. And I guess I'm passively good looking, and I did shower this morning, so and floss, so all right. So you can see you can be above you can have privilege, and you can be targeted simultaneously in the same person. All right. Now, most of us did not have any awareness of this. We didn't create the system. Okay? White men are subject to discrimination. They are. Okay? This system does benefit some folks, but not everyone. So the first step is illuminate that it's happening. And use the power when you have power to benefit, to assist people who don't have the power. So part of the thing that, especially that I've heard in the public discourse, when they talk about the magic of America being social mobility, that is, you can change your status, theoretically. And usually they're talking about class status, social mobility. And the reason they're focusing on the middle class is, oh, well, if you're poor, you can become middle class, and then if you're middle class, you're comfortable, and you can become rich. Right? Social mobility. You can move from being homeless to $1 million. Yeah, right. Okay. So they don't necessarily teach you that, but you're sitting in these chairs because, and I'm not saying that this is a myth, but the idea, social mobility. You're training for a job or a career or something like that. Right? Otherwise, why do it? Why put yourself in debt? Unless that's going to happen. And I ain't saying it's a myth, but I'm saying that there are other barriers besides that. Like, we'll talk about that shortly. Questions so far? Like you just taken this. I don't know if you should be questioned. All right, so again, universal precautions versus universal practices. So the universal practices, tools for handling toxic mimetic pathogens. Isms, privilege systems. You assume everybody exposed to American educational system or mass media is infected or at least a carrier. And protect yourself accordingly. So when we talk about a visual representation of crash, patriarchy generates crash, classism, racism, religion, spirituality, addiction, age, ability, sexism, heterosexism. The matrix. So those are divisive practices. These are uniting universal practices. Just leaving them up. So for example, in the matrix, interlocking systems interact with each other so that a poor, black, disabled, lesbian, agnostic in a wheelchair could arguably be the least powerful social position at effect of multiple forms of discrimination unless she's the CEO. Right? So, but it's not an oppression Olympics. Your task as an ally would be to make her aware of systemic barriers and give skills to overcome them from your position of power wherever you have position of power or privilege. And there is one because you're college educated and have assimilated or acculturated to the values of the culture that created the college. You replicate them in your knowledge, skills, and ability. You could have sacrificed or closeted part of your identity to get your degree, so you're privileged even if you are middle class, white, temporarily able-bodied, lesbian, wicked, if you dress femme. Nobody will know, right? So you have privilege and power in that situation. Okay, so freedom has to begin with freeing yourself and then being aware of who's an ally and when they are not allies. So this is really a contemporary refocusing of the African Constitution and Bill of Rights from ancient times, from before the cities, transplanted to this context now. But I had to show you the original model before I could show you what's going on now, why we're looking at this. So type 3 isms. The institution is unaware and remains unaware that people within it commit types 1 and 2 within the workplace as part of their business operation. Therefore, no policy is made against it. So for example, scientific research can be conducted as if racism isn't present, even as it is causing direct or indirect damage through neglect. Legal policy is set based on the research or case law, and social conduct is allowed, then all kinds of mayhem can occur without acknowledging any damage. Because if there's no proof, or the proof is, not written down, oh, what happened to you? Oh, that's just your story. So for example, I was racially profiled. Now, I was racially profiled a long time ago. My friends on the police commission know of many of the police, and I have a job where I have to interface with the police on an occasional basis. But I'm driving. I moved here from LA. Lived in Cave Junction for 9 months. That was a trip. Anyway, I'm driving this 1972 Dodge Valiant, or Plymouth Valiant, slant 6. With a smoke feature, right? Because the rings are bad, and you basically just pour oil into that engine and it smokes. So I'd gotten stopped a number of times because of the smoking feature, but nothing else happened. So I'm working for Whitebird at the time. I'm playing Sunday softball in Washington Park, wearing my Whitebird t-shirt, and I lived at 3rd and Blair in the Wit at the time, which, my Whitebird colleagues had told me, oh, you live in the ghetto of Eugene. Like, ghetto? Ghettos don't have lawns and cherry trees where I'm from. Okay, but I did notice that I did hear gunshots, and there were a lot of police cruisers there, right? So I'm driving home, and because my LA reflexes are in operation, I notice a police cruiser pull up behind me. Now, one of the ways of avoiding any trouble with being racially profiled is you make sure your legal trip is together. Car was insured, registration was current, had my license, not driving I'm driving the speed limit or under the speed limit. I'm thinking, oh no, the fastest way home is going to look like I'm avoiding her. I didn't know it was her at the time. So make a left, make a right, make a left, make a right, make another left. The lights go on at the Red Barn. Get my registration, get my license. Oh, it's a woman. Cool. All right, I'm expecting that it's going to go well, right? Woman, male organization, has been oppressed. She's going to cut her brother a break, right? Good afternoon, officer. What's the problem? Your left tail light is blinking intermittently. Okay, this is LAPD. I'm thinking this is LAPD standard excuse number 357. In those old cars, if one bulb goes out, the entire system goes out. So I knew it was working, but okay, you're lying, but I can't accuse you of lying, so I go to look. No, don't look. Can I see your license and registration? Here it is. So she's looking at my license. She can see my birthday, right? Have you ever been arrested? How do we go from traffic tail light to my arrest record? And it's Sunday. I got nothing else to do, and I'm around the corner from my house. Sure, I was arrested once when I was 17, just like that. 17 arrests? Now I am articulate, right? I said, I was arrested once when I was 17. She goes, 17 arrests? No, officer, I was arrested once when I was 17. What was that for, theft? Okay, at this point, we've now stepped into harassment. So, standard procedure with LAPD, look for badge numbers. So I look at her badge number. What are you staring at? Like I'm looking at her tits. Yeah, I like a woman in uniform. I'm gonna like ogle you while you've got a Glock. Sure. I'm looking at your pistol marksmanship badge, officer. I was arrested once when I was 17. I was the only black kid in a car full of white kids. We got arrested in West Valley, LAPD, strip search twice, spread your cheeks, nigger. Charges were dropped. I'm a drug counselor with Whitebird. I have to have experience with drugs and counseling. I have a master's degree. Do you have any other questions for me? Do you have any wants or warrants? Wow, okay. Yes, I have a speeding ticket. Hasn't gone to warrant. What's that for? What state? California. Do you know anybody that does the speed limit between LA and San Francisco on I-5? But go ahead, run the license, run the plates. 2 years later, we encountered each other professionally, where this black kid, a black skater, was at South Eugene, and he was in a shop class, and the shop teacher said, dumb nigger. So he, rather than dropping the teacher then in class, he's a skater, right? So he dropped a couple of hits of paper acid in the guy's thermos. And he didn't come on to all of it. He's a little disoriented. So they prosecuted that as assault 3, using acid as a weapon, and boom, I saw him. And right after this happened, a bunch of white skaters had come to me. I was the drug counselor. They said, did you hear about what happened to this kid? No, really? So finally he came to my school and said that, and so what did the district say? And what did the officer say? And she was the arresting officer. And I said, do you remember that incident with the kids that dosed the coffee? Do you remember the race of the kids? Yeah, well, that was terrible. They had no regret at all. I said, okay, do you remember the race of the kids? Repeating myself. No, they were all white kids, weren't they? Okay, so the kid is my color. How do you forget that? So, being called nigger is not, he said that they told him it would be better if you had decked him rather than use the acid. No, really? Why don't you discipline the teacher for using the N-word against a student? That's illegal in your workplace, is it not? It was witnessed, was it not? Or did he say it under his breath? So, type 3. The institution had made no policy against doing that. This is like in the 80s. So how long had it been happening? Type 4, conscious institutional. The institution deliberately discriminates because it is legal to discriminate. So European colonization, the state of Oregon at its founding, segregationist South, apartheid South Africa, Nazi Germany, the Catholic Church in the Inquisition era. Type 5, conscious institutional illegal. It's illegal to discriminate. Laws are passed against it. It continues because it's profitable. So for example, besides Lilly Ledbetter, basically equal pay for equal work, they just made that illegal. CDOs, collateralized debt obligation, arms, adjustable rate mortgages, redlining, round filing minority job applicants, the front office look. These are all illegal. But they persist because people can make money from them. Right? But you have, in order to fight them, you have to use the rules of evidence to collect the evidence to be able to go against them in court. Because the people that are perpetrating them are usually companies and corporations. Type 6, sociostructural violence. So violence is the use of power to diminish or harm the capacity of one group to flourish by another. Societies are built or structured on patterns of behavior which are replicated. So to have the greatest effect, sociostructural violence has to be presented as normal so that it would take concerted collective action of conscious individuals to change it. So without that conscious effort, it remains in place as normal. So for example, disproportionality is the easiest means of detection. So, sociostructural violence. Society and structures within society do violence. So another definition of violence by Hussein Abdullahi Bulhan from his book, Franz Fanon and the Psychology of Oppression. So did I speak to you about Fanon? Okay, another black psychiatrist, 20th century, born